Through a career that spanned almost 6 decades, Jack Kirby created some of the most iconic characters in comics. These are not those characters.
No, today we're covering a group of characters Kirby created for Pacific Comics in the early 1980s. When Pacific closed in 1984, the assets were purchased by Topps. Yeah, the sports card company was also a comic book publisher briefly. In 1993, Topps launched the Kirbyverse, which combined the Pacific creations alongside a couple of other undeveloped ideas.
Kirby's involvement with the Topps line was minimal at best. He only contributed 8 pages to a title called Satan's Six and passed away in early 1994, so that's about the extent of what you got. But let's take a look at some of these other characters that got created.
First up is Captain Victory and the Galactic Rangers, a space opera that Kirby initially tried to tie in with his New Gods characters from DC. The titular Victory was supposed to be the son of Orion and thus the grandson of the tyrannical Darkseid. This was later changed to Victory being the grandson of a villain called Black Mass. After that, we have Silver Star, a government agent named Morgan Miller, who was exposed to some type of super soldier serum that gave him powers, and also wound up classifying him as a mutant. Silver Star would go on to take on other superpowered threats to the United States. Next, we have the Ninth Men, who were part of an ancient race that lived in a forgotten city called Gazra. The group of 4 was led by an executive science officer named Keltan, with the other members being part of the Gazra security force.
We also have another cosmic character in Captain Glory, an intergalactic bounty hunter. Unfortunately, that's about all of the information I could really find about that character. Anyway, in 2011, writer Kurt Busiek of Astro City and Alex Ross teamed up to revive some of these Kirby characters for Dynamite Entertainment with a whole new line. And today we're looking at the introductory 9-issue miniseries for that line. This is Kirby Genesis Volume 1.
On March 2, 1972, NASA launched the Pioneer 10 space probe. Should the craft ever encounter extraterrestrial life, a special plaque was created containing aspects of humanity and the civilization that launched it. However, one artist went against the grain and decided to depict humanity the way it saw itself rather than how it really was. The 2 beings represented the human race's drive, confidence, and most of all, its capacity for dreaming.
Okay, this is actually partially based on true events, not the Pioneer 10 thing. That just had a plaque depicting a generic-looking man and woman and directions on how to get to Earth. But the Los Angeles Times contacted several artists, including Jack Kirby, about what they thought should have been on the plaque, and, well, this was Kirby's contribution. Humanity as it thought of itself rather than humanity as it really was.
25 years later, and the probe is exiting the furthest reaches of the solar system where it has encountered a weird anomaly. Back on Earth, young Kirby Freeman watches through a telescope as Pioneer 10 enters the anomaly and vanishes. He's joined by his best friend / neighbor Bobby Cortez and her father Jake. The Cortezes effectively split a condo with Kirby and his mother, with police officer Jake often watching over the boy while his mother is working. Meanwhile, the probe begins moving through hyperspace, traveling not only through the universe but through time as well, and encounters quite a bit, like Galaxy Green, an all-female group of bounty hunters who are in pursuit of a criminal named Sundance and his gang. It then attracts the attention of Captain Victory, who immediately takes off in pursuit. Eventually, Pioneer 10 collides with a massive hive-like structure. The collision results in a massive energy surge, which catches the attention of a being named Jarek, the Wanderer. Jarek sets out to track down where the probe came from, knowing that it will bring others with it. Moving to the present day, Kirby Freeman is a student at Erickson University in St. Paul, Minnesota. He's busy working on his astroengineering degree when Bobby enters his dorm room because it's Friday and time to cut loose. He's not interested. He's got too much work. Not to mention Bobby's always fit in better at parties. Not him.
Yeah, it turns out that Bobby's bubbly personality, along with the fact that puberty was insanely kind, allowed her to make a lot of friends in high school and be insanely popular, while Kirby didn't. Still, Bobby and Kirby remained friends well into adulthood, with Kirby even moving in with the Cortezes after his mother passed away.
Any plans are halted by a blinding light and equally as loud noise. Kirby and Bobby race to the window to see 2 lights beginning to descend onto downtown Minneapolis. The 2 hop into Kirby's Jeep and race to see what's going on along with a few hundred others. When they find a parking spot, the onlookers are greeted by 2 giant beings staring down at them. Kirby recognizes the 2 from somewhere, but he can't quite place it. As he tries to recollect his memory, the 2 giants issue a statement.
Show me what you got!
Sorry, internet law demanded it.
While everyone desperately tries to remember the lyrics to Get Swifty, the 2 beings move up into the sky and send out a massive ring of energy, then vanish. Over the next few days, Bobby and Kirby crash with Jake, who points out that CNN has identified the 2 as being from the Pioneer 10 plaque. Other reports begin coming in, like an armored soldier being sighted in Afghanistan taking down the Taliban. Also, a large underground city has been unearthed in Chicago. The name on the plates have translated to Gazra. Also, 4 human beings in suspended animation pods have been discovered in the city. It's then that one of the pods opens up and a being calling out the name Keltan emerges. Also, a large ape-like being has appeared in the Pacific Northwest. Could it be the mysterious Sasquatch? Finally, a large mysterious island has appeared in the South Pacific. Meanwhile, in Wyoming, a spaceship makes a fiery landing. It's Sundance and his gang, and Galaxy Green isn't too far behind. The women are none too pleased to suddenly find themselves in the middle of a patriarchy. As all of this is happening, Kirby and Bobby return to campus, with Bobby wanting to check out some findings at the museum. Inside, Bobby's mood subtly changes as she's drawn to a mysterious book. She smashes the glass case containing the book and begins rifling through it, pleading for Kirby's help as she doesn't seem to be in control of her own body. Before Kirby can do anything, Bobby starts reading from the book, and in a flash of light, Bobby is gone and replaced by someone called the Midnight Swan.
Okay, the Apocrypha for this series states that the Midnight Swan was possibly a character developed for Kirby's New God series at DC. However, given the fact the character is from a mythological realm where characters that, while technically in the public domain, are most well known for being used by Marvel Comics, like Balder and Sigurd from Norse mythology, as well as apparently Hercules, I just can't say for certain that that was the case. In fact, this might have been maybe a failed concept for Kirby's Eternals series at Marvel, which was also kind of a New God series.
The Midnight Swan knocks Kirby aside and takes off through the roof of the building. Kirby calls Jake and the two take off in pursuit, with Kirby theorizing that she's headed to the site in Wyoming. Along the way, Jake acknowledges that he's always known about Kirby's feelings for Bobby, even though at first Bobby actually had feelings for Kirby, even though he didn't seem to reciprocate as his head was always buried in a book. However, over time, Jake came to realize that part of the reason why Kirby was so reticent was because he was afraid of jeopardizing his friendship with Bobby. So now he's actually okay with the idea of them possibly being a couple. The trip is interrupted by the Sasquatch-like creature appearing in the road and knocking the Jeep over. Sensing the creature is panicked, Kirby tries to reason with it, learning the creature's name is Thunderfoot. Before anything else can happen, Kirby and Thunderfoot are knocked out and taken away by beings in flying saucers, with Jake getting left behind. Meanwhile, Bobby begins rebelling against the Midnight Swan's control, or to be more precise, the outside force that appears to be controlling the Midnight Swan. She manages to open a portal to the Swan's home dimension known as the Mythlands. She manages to send a distress call before getting pulled back and losing control again. Back in Wyoming, Silver Star looks on as Sundance's gang squares off with the Galaxy Green. It's then that Jake Cortez happens across the government agent, and he explains the situation. The two agree to work together when the shootout suddenly comes to an end. It's then that an individual emerges from a cave. He introduces himself as Rogue, and he's the person who hired Sundance and his gang. Back in Chicago, the Gazrans, Keltan, Gilda, Bombas, and Turek have put on special Symbi suits which can act as translators. They explain that they were part of law enforcement on Gazra, and it's then that they sense the presence of Rogue, a villain from Gazran society, as well as the object he had Sundance's gang bring to Earth, a cocoon containing one of the galaxy's greatest villains. Silver Star also recognizes the cocoon and who's really pulling the strings, as Darius Drum arrives alongside the Midnight Swan.
Darius Drum was the recurring villain in Kirby's Silver Star series, and, well, one guy's taking that news pretty hard.
Kirby and Thunderfoot are dropped off on a mysterious island that time seems to have forgotten. The giant ape then begins leading Kirby to safety. Thunderfoot manages to introduce Kirby to his partners, Erich von Kilhausen, a World War II German U-boat captain, and 2 cave boys named Rocky and Craig alongside their pet dinosaur, Reptar.
Don't worry. We'll get to it. Don't worry.
Von Kilhausen explains to Kirby that they are on the Phantom Continent, where time seems to stand still, which is why beings from the era of dinosaurs and also World War II can appear unaged and unharmed. The continent can also appear at any place in the world. It was initially in the South Seas, and it's now just off the coast of Angola. The island is overseen by beings called the Keepers, who capture rare exotic animals and bring them to the island for no unknown reason. The group comes across a temple containing a statue of a large Eldritchian horror. Kirby is mesmerized by the statue's beastly appearance and starts being drawn in. Von Kilhausen and the others are forced to pull Kirby to safety before the cult that worships the deity arrives and begins attacking them. Back in the US, the Gazrans meet up with Galaxy Green only to find their mutual adversaries have completely vanished. The villains have absconded to Darius' secret headquarters, where they open the cocoon. The pod's occupant is a woman named Asperizdra Regina, Queen of the Cosmic Hive, also known as Lady Lightning. As Darius begins explaining the situation to her, Bobby continues stressful control of the Midnight Swan. Darius and Rogue then begin explaining their plan. Rogue wishes to reacquire the Gazran proto-seed, which can be used to shape matter to the will of the one who wields it. With that, Lady Lightning can have her hive restored, and the Earth can be theirs. After that, the rest of the universe can be as well. Meanwhile, the Gazrans and Galaxy Green argue over who exactly has jurisdiction over all these villains, only to be interrupted by Tiger 20, emissary of the Galactic Rangers. Tiger 20 explains this is officially Captain Victory's cause, but the others are allowed to help if they are willing. Silver Star and Jake Cortez look on from afar as everyone boards Captain Victory's ship. Captain Victory points out that Galaxy Green really shouldn't be here, as their job was to prevent Sundance from getting Lady Lightning's cocoon back on Earth. So they've already failed their mission. Also, the Ninth Men are allowed sanctuary on any planet of their choosing, because right now the best bet is, with Lady Lightning being activated, if she gets to one of her hives, the Earth is good as done for. So really they should cut their losses and try to contain the madness rather than allow it to spread to other planets. Silver Star then teleports onto the ship with Jake Cortez to interject. The Earth is where he happens to keep all his stuff, and he can't let any harm come to it or the people who live on it. Though initially reticent, Victory eventually agrees to try to stop the group of villains first, with using the destruction of the Earth as a last chance option. Gilda of the Gazrans points out that they can track Rogue, and they know where the other villains are already headed, so it's probably time to formulate a battle plan. Back on the Phantom Continent, the group catches the attention of Jarek the Wanderer as they try to escape the warrior cult on Raft. As they go over the waterfall and discover a secret temple, Reptar has some more pressing concerns.
When there's kids on the ice.
See? I told you we'd get to it.
The walls of the temple contain carvings that explain some type of creation myth. Von Killhausen is able to translate some of it, saying that it depicts beings coming to Earth to deliver a gift of other beings that look like the alien visitors that appeared over Minneapolis earlier. Kirby reaches out and touches the wall, which causes a sudden rush of information to surge into his head. Meanwhile, the villains have tracked down the location of the proto-seed under the Arctic ice cap. Time is of the essence due to the fact that they are aware that they are being tracked. Rogue claims the proto-seed just as the heroes arrive.
I'd like to apologize as this whole thing seems a little scatterbrained. It's because it is. The narrative just keeps bouncing around from place to place to place for sometimes just a page worth of material, and, well, it just doesn't help with the narrative flow at all. So, good news is this three-pronged story is becoming a two-pronged story, so things should be tightening up a little.
As the attack begins, Rogue uses the proto-seed to bring up a large group of sea monsters. This allows the villains to gain the upper hand, with Darius enlarging to take on Silver Star. Jake calls out to Bobby to try to reason with her, but it proves futile as Midnight Swan just stands there. Back on the Phantom Continent, Kirby explains that a group called the Progenitors came to Earth and found something that compelled them to nurture the planet. The Progenitors created beings based on the primal elements to light, heaven, earth, wisdom, and craft. These beings, called the Primals, then guided humanity through its early days. However, their presence also created a darkness that began to spread hatred, war, and destruction across the land. This caused a never-ending cycle of death and rebirth on the planet. Eventually, the Primals gave up and tried to leave, only to be captured by the darkness and sealed away in cosmic pods. Now it seems the Progenitors are returning to find out what happened. The darkness has a plan to use the Primals to take down the Progenitors and thus take over the entire universe. Returning to the battle, the Ninth Men try to confront Roeg, who just uses the proto-seed to drain their energy. However, the tide changes again when a portal to the Mythlands opens up and various mythological figures begin pouring through.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the Mythland characters too.
On the Phantom Continent, Kirby and the others are cornered by the warrior cult, only for their adversaries to suddenly all freeze in time. Kirby realizes this is the work of the Primals. They carved the cave wall as an activation to free them. Back at the battle, even though the Mythlander's appearance has tipped the favor, T-20 is seriously injured and has to revert to his human form in order to recover. Still, things begin to go the hero's way as they begin to focus their attack on Darius' headquarters. This is all part of the villain's plan, though, as he has Midnight Swan open a portal to New York City where it turns out remnants of Lady Lightning's hive are being stored for research. It's then that Darius Drum reveals his true form as the Darkness Primal. As he and the other villains make their way through the portal, his power is felt all the way on the Phantom Continent. This proves to be enough for the Primals to once more cut their losses and try to start things over again. However, Kirby isn't having any of it and demands to be free from the continent, so he can try to set things right. The Primals ignore him and take off, unknowingly with Thunderfoot hitching a ride. It's then that Jarek the Wanderer arrives to give Kirby a lift back to New York City. Along the way, Jarek explains the Progenitors' history. They would travel the cosmos visiting certain planets. They're responsible for life across the entire universe. Unfortunately, the same story is played out on every planet they have tried to influence. A darkness appears to ruin everything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jarek and Kirby arrive in New York City as Lady Lightning activates her hive. The heroes are also there, working alongside the military to stop the villains. The Primals then arrive with Thunderfoot in tow. Kirby points out to the Proto-Gods that they can easily end all of this, but they've made their preemptively stupid choice, and Jarek actually agrees with them, saying there's really nothing else that can be done. Meanwhile, Rogue uses the Proto-Seed to begin merging Lady Lightning's hive into a giant Gestalt creature as Jarek sets Kirby down near Jake. Kirby then proceeds to march directly into the hive to try to get Bobby back. This impresses Tiger 20. Kirby immediately runs into Sundance and his crew, who are willing to let him go as, well, they've made all the money that they can off of this, and just destroying the planet doesn't pay them at all. Kirby manages to get to Midnight Swan and begins pleading with Bobby to take control once more. Though resistant at first, the sight of Kirby's face begins to have a bit of a breakthrough. Unfortunately, this all comes to an end when Kirby is stabbed through the heart by an unabsorbed member of the hive.
No.
The attack does prove enough to get Bobby to take back control of the Midnight Swan, and the last thing Kirby sees before passing out is the two people from the Pioneer probe returning to Earth's skies. Outside, Tiger 20 has re-entered the battle a little too soon as he isn't fully regenerated, and he takes another blast. This one proves to be too much damage. It's then that the darkness returns again in his true form. With his final breath, Kirby asks Bobby to lift him up to the Pioneer 2, as it turns out they are the progenitors. Kirby explains the progenitors didn't plant humanity, they found it. All of their nurturing work has resulted in this, both good and bad. But that's what makes humanity special. Sure, bad things happen, but good things can still come from that. Just as Kirby begins offering himself as sacrifice so the Earth can live, Jarek intercedes. The Wanderer chastises both the progenitors and the Primals for constantly taking the easy way out and just starting things over again. If humanity is to reach its fullest potential, it must do it on its own, even if it mucks things up on occasion. It's then that a large bearded being appears in the sky and absorbs the progenitors. The darkness begins to laugh in victory, only to be suddenly taken out by Captain Victory's ship. Kirby and Darius Drum both fall to the ground, while Thunderfoot takes down Rogue, with the Proto-Seed being ineffective against the large primate. Midnight Swan catches the still-dying Kirby and manages to get him to the ground, where she reverts to Bobby Cortez. The two admit their love for each other as Tiger 20 approaches them. Tiger 20 knows his body is too far damaged for his armor to try to regenerate him, but it could still help Kirby. Tiger 20 transfers his armor over to Kirby and passes away when Kirby revives. Bobby and Kirby then kiss. Weeks go by and the villains are all taken into custody by the Galactic Rangers, who leave alongside Galaxy Green. The spirit of the Midnight Swan returns to the Mythlands, though a part of it will still remain with Bobby Cortez, leaving the possibility for it to return always open. As for the Primals, well, they just vanish entirely. Meanwhile, two new supergroups pop up, Satan 6 and the Teen Agents, a singing boy band super team. Kirby and Bobby prepare to move to New York City as the government has hired them and they'll be transferring their student credits over to NYU for the time being. Or at least, that's the story they're giving to everyone.
And that concludes Kirby Genesis Volume 1. How was it? Well, on the plus side, I did think this had some really top-notch artwork in it. I mean, this kind of mixed, painted, digital colored style really looks good. It does a good job of conveying characters and action throughout this thing. And I did like the characters of Bobby and Jake Cortez and, of course, Kirby Freeman. They were actually the most interesting part of this for me. Unfortunately, that's where the compliments really do end. Like I said before, the narrative just bounces around way too much, focusing on one thing just briefly and then immediately jumping over to another thing and then immediately jumping back to the thing we were just focusing on does not make for good narrative flow at all. It's just convoluted and muggy, and it just, like I said, it just does not work. And also, I don't really care about any of the other heroes in this. There's no reference material for some of these things. There's a little bit for Silver Star, there's a little bit for Captain Victory, and I just mean those characters. That's it. There's nothing for Darius Drum. Nothing for the other Galactic Rangers, including Tiger 20, who is supposedly, I guess, an important character given that he dies. But I don't care about him because I don't know anything about him. Likewise, the villains, Darius Drum, Lady Lightning, the Galaxy Green group. I don't know anything about them, and there's nothing in the Apocrypha about them, so it just does not help. And I know Kurt Busiek is a better storyteller than this. I know he's really good at taking bits of continuity and making it suitable to new readers. This just does not do a good job of that. It's just expecting you to know who all these characters are, and I don't. This thing was done in reverse. This was a miniseries that was used to set up an entire line of comics, when it should have been a line of comics that was used to set up this miniseries, building into the event.
And then maybe you could have focused on Jake and Bobby and Kirby more, because those were the interesting characters. This just does not work, and unfortunately I have to give Kirby Genesis an F.
And with that, let's see what we'll be doing next time on the Random Trade Review.
Hey guys, got a request for the show? Check out my Patreon at patreon.com/sleepytimeforcatproductions. And if you like the video, give it a like, share it, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.